After the 1967 Arab-Israeli War and Israel's occupation of Gaza, Mossad agents infiltrated young Palestinians, promoting travel for better opportunities, just as the advertisements by Al Majd Europe flooded social media in Gaza in 2024 and 2025, waving open a back door to remove Palestinians from Gaza under the guise of saving them after 2 years of genocide.
طبعاً الدعاية الصهيونية في قطاع غزة كانت تبث بين الشباب إنه في فرص عمل في البرازيل، وكان الاسم البرازيل فقط لا غير، لا حكوا باراغواي ولا حكوا غيره. في ناس قبلنا طلعوا بس ما كناش نعرف فيهم. بعدين تقابلنا في البرازيل، تقابلنا في مناطق تانية، والله أعلم وين هم هالإيه، إيش صار فيهم.
إفقاد الفلسطينيين حياتهم ووضعهم أمام خيار وحيد، وهو ما يحدث في غزة الآن، بمعنى ارتكاب إبادة جماعية، يعني حوالي يزيد عن 80,000 فلسطيني خلال عامين، تدمير بشكل كامل لمقومات الحياة، كل مقومات الحياة، تدمير البنية التحتية، تدمير المنازل، 90% من قطاع غزة مدمر، ثم فتح أبواب متعددة للهجرة كما هو في مجد أوروبا وغيرها، فتح أبواب متعددة وخلق بيئة تستحيل معها الحياة، ليست تصبح صعبة. اليوم معظم قطاع غزة بيئة غير صالحة للحياة.
Let me just explain what I mean by that. Other scholars, classical scholars, had a more difficult to understand term. They would say nifaq fil aqidah, nifaq fil amal. But I'm using different terms to say the same thing, because I want this to be easier for you to grasp. Okay. There are people who became Muslim who had no intention or interest in Islam. Their only reason for becoming Muslim is because Islam is a growing power. I'm going to join the stock is going up, might as well buy into the stock. Right? And if things go south, I can always sell my stock and go the other way. Right? So وَقَدْ دَخَلُوا بِالْكُفْرِ وَهُمْ قَدْ خَرَجُوا بِهِ. They came with kufr to begin with, and they're going to leave with kufr. They never had an ounce of iman to begin with. Right? They never had the right intention for believing. So they're basically like spies. They're basically like, it's a form of espionage. And Allah will tell us that actually some of the tribes, the Jewish tribes, they wanted to undermine the Prophet ﷺ. And one of the ways to undermine him, because the Jews were known as people of literature and knowledge and rabbis and things like that. They're knowledgeable people, right? And now a man is coming and claiming to be a prophet. What's the best way to sort of undermine him? What's the best way to discredit him? They would send some of their students and tell them, go pretend to take Shahada and go join Islam. Go join Islam. Sit with the Prophet for a whole day, and then by nighttime say, I spent a whole day with him, and given that I have, my ijazah in Torah, and I've got, I studied under Sheikh this, based on the knowledge that I have, that's not a prophet. Right? Aminu billadhi, what is it? Let me pull up the ayah. My hifz is getting weak now. آمنوا بالذي أنزل على الذين آمنوا وجه النهار واكفروا آخره لعلهم يرجعون. Right? Believe in what's been revealed to those who actually believe during the day. And by the end of it, become kuffar again. Why? Because then some of them will also leave. Why? Because a lot of the Arabs were not very educated. So when they see an educated, scholarly rabbi type come and join Islam, they're like, wow, even the scholars joining Islam. And then the scholar's like, yeah, I made a mistake. I spent the whole day with them. It's not nothing really here. I'm out. So they're like, well, if he took a closer look and he left, then maybe I'm just not that educated. I should leave too. So they were hoping they could take credibility away from the Prophet ﷺ by doing that. But the people who entered into the religion for that purpose, did they enter sincerely? No, it's obvious. They entered for espionage. They entered to create corruption, to create a problem for the Muslims. But then there's a second kind of munafiq. There's a second kind. And the second kind of munafiq is a scary kind. The first one, Allah will deal with them. And many of the places in the Quran, Allah is talking about that kind. Because they're making schemes with the enemy. They're making power moves, right? So you could tell they have no loyalty to Islam itself. But there's another kind of nifaq. And the other kind of nifaq is somebody joined Islam for the right reasons. Then they realized, this is too much to ask. I gotta go to war? Well, I gotta leave my home? Well, you want me to spend how much now? So I didn't know, I was a good religion, I like how the Quran sounds and stuff, but these demands are, It's quite a bit to ask. And I can't be friends with these people or those people anymore, and I become Muslim. All these people are going to become my enemy. I don't know. Can we have like a lighter Islam? Can we have like a little bit more like something a little more progressive? Something more like, we can fit it in our context a little bit. Why do we have to like be so tough? And I don't know. The Prophet keeps talking about. Is there a surah that's telling us to go to war? لَوْلَا نُزِلَتْ سُورَةٌ. Why is he telling us to go to war? Did a surah come down telling us to go to war? Like they're starting to have a problem with some of the revelations. They're not sitting well with them, right? But they're not disturbed enough to leave the religion, but they're not at peace with what's coming. They're disturbed by what's coming. And so they're la ilaha ula wa la ilaha ula. They're not quite here, they're not quite there. They're oscillating. مُذَبْذَبِينَ بَيْنَ ذَلِكَ. They're caught between the two sides. The thing that's the careful thing to study in the Quran is sometimes Allah is talking about the deliberate munafiq.
Look at your child right now and ask yourself this.
Is sometimes Allah is talking about the deliberate munafiq, the conscious munafiq. These people, they're struggling with their faith and they're starting to pull back and they're starting to exhibit signs of hypocrisy in different degrees, and now they're starting to cut corners and maybe find a way to not be too loyal to Islam or even be partially loyal to Islam, etc. That's another kind of nifaq that Allah talks about in the Quran. These are two different kinds of nifaq. The scary thing is, Allah did not say, I'm talking about nifaq category A over here, and I'm talking about nifaq category B over here. He's just talking about nifaq straight up and saying, for example, the hypocrites are in the lowest pit of the hellfire. So anybody afraid of it is going to think, well, that's talking about me. And that's by design. Allah wants the believer to be worried that they might fall under the second category. Believers aren't in the first category. We are Muslim because we believe in Islam. We are not in danger of the first category. We are in danger of the second category. And the second category can only be recognized by myself internally. Somebody else cannot recognize me. I want you to understand this last portion too. When someone disobeys Allah, they don't become a munafiq. They don't become a munafiq. They committed an act of isyan. They did a disobedience. They made a mistake. They did a sin. And it can make it can corrupt their heart to some extent, put a blemish on their heart, and they can make tawbah and they can remove that blemish. But a sin does not make you a munafiq. A sin does not make you a munafiq. Continuous sin, and then eventually justifying the sin, and then saying, why is this a sin anyway? What's the big problem with it? I don't know. This doesn't seem like it's such a bad thing. Now you're trying to bend the religion to your preferences without quite, you're not leaving the religion, you're not walking away from the religion, you're making the religion bend the way you bend. Now we're starting to trend towards what? The munafiq side. There's a difference between someone who says, I should pray, I'm just lazy, I don't get up in the morning, I need to work on myself. Right? I need to work on myself. Sinful, in danger of hypocrisy, but not hypocrite yet. And somebody says, yeah, I don't wake up, what's the big deal? What's the big deal? It's not like you're going to go to Jahannam for that. It's fine. It's not that bad. In fact, you should relax too. You had a long week. Right? Right? Now we're treading towards nifaq. But that's something you have to judge for yourself, I have to judge for myself. That's why Allah did not address the Muslims. Even when Allah was talking to the hypocrites, Allah used Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu. Those of you who what? Believe. Allah never used Ya ayyuha alladhina nafaqu. Those of you who are hypocrites. He didn't say that. Even when he was talking about hypocrisy, when he was saying, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu lima taquluna ma la taf'alun. Those of you who believe, why do you say what you don't do? When there's a contradiction between your speech and your actions, isn't that hypocrisy? Classic definition. Why begin with Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu? Because Allah is teaching us a profound lesson. This is a disease of the heart, which means only Allah knows who has it. On the outside, a sinner and a hypocrite may do the same thing. On the outside, in fact, the righteous person and the hypocrite may do the same thing. Abdullah ibn Ubay used to be at Fajr every morning. He was more regular than most of us. Right? So how are you going to tell that that's hypocrisy? Right? So there's no way to tell what's going on inside the heart. So we as a people need to call out sin. We need to call out behavior, but when we start calling people munafiq, and we start labeling people that way or thinking about people that way, that I think is a disease by itself. That's actually a pretty serious sickness by itself. May Allah Azza wa Jal protect us from falling into this deep down trap, and may Allah Azza wa Jal keep us from being people that don't have any loyalty towards anyone, right? Because this is actually in the end the worst thing of a munafiq, because they're two-faced. They don't trust anyone, and therefore nobody can trust them. So even their enemies aren't. The enemies of Islam aren't their friend, the Muslims aren't their friend. They think they have a backup plan everywhere. Allah is saying you're actually you're cut off from everywhere. You're completely cut off from every direction. May Allah not make us of those and keep our alliances where they're supposed to be. Barakallahu li wa lakum fil Qur'an al-Hakim wa nafa'ani wa iyyakum bil ayati.